Hello again. This is Beth Bennett from Danville Church-based tutorial program. I'm coming to you today for a lesson that is specifically tailored to first graders, a reading and a math lesson. However, it could absolutely be appropriate for kindergarten and second grade as well. Today we're going to be reading a story and we're going to be focusing on some of the story elements. So the story elements meaning the characters, which will be the people or the animals that are in the story, the setting, being where the story takes place and when the story takes place, our conflict, which may also be known as the problem in the story, and the conclusion or the resolution to the problem. How did they solve their problem in the story? And one thing I want you specifically to think about today is the setting. The setting or where a story takes place is very important to a story. If you think about, for example, I'm sitting here in my kitchen and it's relatively quiet so you can hear me, and that's my setting right now. What if I was sitting outside by the road? Will we be interrupted? Could you hear cars? Could you possibly hear dogs barking or the wind blowing? So I may have to change what I'm doing if the setting is different. Just like in the same way in the story, the setting is very important to how the story develops. So the story that we're reading today is called Spring, or the title is Spring is Here, a bear and mole story, written by Will Hildenbrand. Not only was he the author of the story, he was also the illustrator. So he drew the pictures too. So he's a really talented man. Now, already, if we're thinking about the characters, the author has given us a big hint right here by telling us a bear and mole story. I bet those are the characters in this story. And if we look at the front cover, we can see a picture of bear and mole. Mole woke up. Is it spring? He wondered. He opened the window to smell the air. Sniff, sniff, sniff. He dressed. Let's look at this picture. Are there any signs of spring in this picture? You're right. We have flowers blooming. That's usually when we know spring is here, is when we see our first flowers start to bloom. And tiptoed past Bear's bedroom. And stepped outside. He felt mud under his feet. Squish, squish, squish. Look at this picture. Is there a way that we know that winter is leaving and spring is here? Yes, the snow is starting to melt away and you're starting to see green grass growing. First signs of spring. Spring is here, cried Mole. I must tell Bear. How did he know that spring was here? Oh, yes, because there's some beautiful flowers. Mole rapped on Bear's window. Tap, tap, tap. Shoo, replied Bear. Bear's still sleeping. Why is Bear sleeping? Yeah, because bears do sleep during the winter. That's called hibernation. Mole dashed inside and knocked on Bear's door. Knock, knock, knock. Shoo, replied Bear. He was still asleep. Mole tickled Bear's nose. Swish, swish, swish. Replied Bear. So let's stop for a minute and talk about what's going on in our story. So far, I think we know who the characters are. Is in the story that we're talking about? Bear, and Mole. Not only are they the main characters in the story, They're pretty much the only characters in this story so far. Let's talk about the setting. Is it at their house? Yes. That's the place that the story is taking place, but when is the story taking place? Yeah, a big hint right here in the title. Spring. It's taking place at the very beginning of spring. So we're going to write that up here on our setting as well. I think we can already start to think about what the problem or the conflict is in the story. What is happening? What is Mole trying to do? Yes, he's trying to wake Bear up. Bear is sleeping and he will not wake up. So that is our problem or conflict right now. Bear will not wake up to see it is spring. So now going back to our story, I'm excited to figure out how are we going to solve this problem? How is Bear going to wake up? Is Mole going to be able to wake Bear up? Let's read. Mole played his horn for Bear. Toot, toot, toot. Replied Bear. He's still asleep. Oh, and now he has the pillow over his head. He really doesn't want to wake up. Oh dear, sighed Mole. Spring is here and Bear must get up. Mole thought and he thought, then he scampered outside. I notice he has a basket in his hand. I wonder what he's going to do with that basket. He gathered. Can you see what he's gathering? He milked. He churned. Now, you probably don't know anything about this churn, but that's how we actually make butter. Most of us just go to the store and buy butter, but if you wanted to make your own butter, you use this to churn the butter. Let's think about what he's getting here. He got an egg, he got some milk, he has some butter. What's he going to do with all of these ingredients? He poured, he mixed, he baked. Ooh, look at how he's walking in with this something delicious, and you can see the smell is going right to Bear's nose. Finally, he shuffled into Bear's room. Wake up, Bear, mumbled Mole. Spring is here. Do you think this is going to wake him up? Yum, replied Bear. Then he looked at Mole. Wake up, Mole, said Bear. Spring is here. Why is Mole asleep? Let's think about what he's been doing all morning. Replied Mole. Now Mole is asleep and Bear is awake. Why is Mole asleep? I think so too. I think he's so tired. He got worn out from trying to wake Bear up all morning, so now he's going back to sleep. That was a fun story. So now let's look at our last square. How did they solve the problem? What was the conclusion? So Mole cooked a meal which woke up Bear. So now we've done our story elements. We know who the characters are, that the setting was in the house, and it was springtime, you might think, how would the story have been different if it was the beginning of winter? Like it was the beginning of spring, but what if it was the beginning of winter? How would the story be different? When I think about it, I know that bears hibernate during the winter, so would the story be different and it be bear just going to sleep? Maybe gathering a lot of food or eating a lot of food because it was the beginning of winter and he knew he had to sleep all winter? Settings are important because they really define what's happening in the story. Our conflict was that Bear would not wake up, even though it was spring. He was having trouble. And our resolution is that Mole, he cooked a meal which woke Bear up, and now he's ready for spring. Hello, we're back. And now we're going to be moving into our math lesson, which is also geared towards first grade students, but I think it could be appropriate for some kindergarten students and some second grade students as well. And what we're going to be talking about today are we're going to look at 3 different number stories and how we would solve a number story. So let's first look and see what a number story is. I'm going to look at our first one and read it. John had 4 cars. Deborah gave John 3 more cars. How many cars does John have altogether? I'm going to read that again. John had 4 cars. So I want you to close your eyes and think about and picture 4 cars. Let's think about toy cars. Okay? Keep your eyes closed while I read the second part. Deborah gave John 3 more cars. So in your mind, you should be visualizing he had 4, John had 4, then Deborah gave him 3 more. How many cars does John have altogether? There are several different strategies that you could use to figure out this number story. I'm going to go over 2 today. So first, let's talk about what are the important parts of this number story. John had 4 cars. So the fact that he had 4 cars is an important part. Deborah gave John 3 more cars. That's an important part as well. Not always, but most of the time, the numbers in a number story are important and you need those. How many cars does John have altogether? So let's think about it. I've put here the 4 cars that John already had. 1, 2, 3, 4. If he gets 3 more cars from Deborah, is the number going to be more than 4 or less than 4? It is going to be more than 4. We are adding because he is getting more. So let's put down the 3 more cars. So now we know that we have 4. We don't need to count these 4 again. We already know we have 4, so we can just go ahead and count on. 4, 5, 6, 7. John now has 7 cars. We could also make this a number sentence. If we put our addition sign down, we have 4 add 3 equals, how much did we say it equals? 7, right. So we'll write the number 7. See that number 7? And put it right here to complete our addition number sentence. All right, here's our story problem number 2, our number story. John had 6 cars. Deborah gave him some more cars. Now John has 13 cars. How many did Deborah give him? So let's look again at our important parts. John had 6 cars. Deborah gave him some more cars. We don't know how many she gave him, but we know in the end, John has 13 cars. So we're trying to figure out how many did Deborah give John? So let's count out our cars. First, John had 6 cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's move that a little bit further so you can see it. So John had 6 cars. We're adding, but we don't know how many we're adding because it just says that Deborah gave him some more cars. So we're going to put a question mark next because we don't know how many she gave. And then equals, in the end, when it was all done, John has 13 cars. So now we have to count out 13 cars because that's how many he ended up with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cars. So what we're trying to figure out is the question mark. John had 6. We added some that Deborah gave him. That's what we don't know. And in the end, his total was 13 cars. So what we can do is we can do something called counting on in our brains that we don't even need to use these cars. So if we already know that he had 6, we have to figure out how many is in between 6 and 13. So we have to count up to 13. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. How many is that number? You're right, 7. Now let's double check to see if we're right. If I add 7 more cars, we'll take away our question mark because we think we know that it's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see if we are right. Is 6 plus 7 or 6 add 7 equal to 13? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We were right. So 6 at 7 equals 13. Deborah gave John 7 more cars. All right, we're here to do our third and last story problem of the day. John had some cars. That's important because we know he had cars, but we don't know how many he had. Deborah gave him 5 more cars. Okay, so now we know he has 5 cars that Deborah gave him. Now John has 7 cars. How many cars did John have to start with? So it's asking us how many did John have to start with. So we don't know how many he had to start with. So we're going to use our question mark. To start with, we do not know. But then we know that Deborah gave him 5 cars. So we're going to count out 5 cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the end, John had 7 cars. So we know at the end, where what he's equal to in the end, the total was 7. So let's get 7 cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we don't know how many he started with. He was giving 5, and now he is up to 7 cars. So since the number went up from 5 to 7, we know that he did have some cars to start with. So we can do this in our head by saying, okay, we already have 5 that Deborah gave us, and we have to get to 7. So let's do that. 5, 6, 7. So that's saying that he had 2 cars to start with. So let's add that in and see if we're right. So if John had 2 cars to start with, 2, and then Deborah gave him 5, let's count that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are right. John had 2, Deborah gave him 5, which he ended with 7. That concludes our lessons today. Today we learned about the importance of setting on a story, and we also learned about solving addition story problems. On behalf of Danville Church-Based Tutorial Program, I'd like to thank the Danville, Pennsylvania Community Foundation and United Way for making this possible. Have a blessed day.